After reviewing the improvements in Revit 2025 and putting them into practice on real projects, I've realized that some of them are not completely perfect. In this video, I'll show you not only those improvements for structural Revit, but also its limitations. Shall we? Let's start with the new feature in Revit 2025 for the Array tool. An example of where we could use matrices in Revit Structures is this 2D family for shear connection plates. If I go to edit this family, we can see that it is made with a matrix that defines the number of bolts and which we can modify with this parameter shown here. I'm just going to close the family and go back to my project in Revit 2023. If I select the family, I can change the number of bolts from 5 to 4 or even 2. But when I try to place only 1 or no bolts at all, it gives me this error where I can only cancel or even delete the item. But let's see then what happens in Revit 2025, where this same family, without changing anything, now behaves differently. Now I can give it the value of 1 or 0 and it doesn't destroy my family like previous versions used to do. However, here it comes, the first limitation in the new features. This update only works on arrays made inside a family. If I wanted to make an array with a model element in the project, like this structural beam, it no longer works. As you can see here, if I change the value to a number less than 2, it tells me that it has to be a value between 2 and 200. Maybe in the future this will also be fixed. The next improvement is related to plan sheets. Now with Revit 2025, we can group sheets to have better control, especially when we have very large projects. In this small case, I have plans for the foundation and structure which I want to separate. To do this, I right-click on the Sheets tab and create a new collection for substructure and one more collection for superstructure. Then simply, to add sheets to the collections, I simply select them and drag them to where I want to add them. And here I did it like this, but in larger projects with different buildings in the same project, we can separate according to the building. And one of the most notable advantages of this is the ability to filter the plans when printing them using those groups or collections of sheets. I'm going to go here to print, and here we can select which plans we want to export or print. Right up here, we normally only had the option of all, 2D, and 3D. Now those groups that we defined previously appear automatically, making it faster to select only the plans that we want to print. In this case, I can print only the foundation or only the structure. I couldn't find any error or limitation in this feature. Good on you, Revit. Another improvement in 2025 is that we can now align the texts in the details. It doesn't matter if these are tags and texts mixed together. In this case, I have a detail with 3 texts and a tag for the cold formed element. I just select the set of texts and tags, and in the tab right up here, we now have this multiple alignment option with several options. For this example, I'm just going to choose Align Right and see how they line up perfectly. Note that this process aligns with respect to the furthest element. If I align to the right, Revit will take as a reference the element that is furthest to the right and will align the others with respect to that text. If I wanted, for example, to align with this text, I cannot align to the right because this would happen. Instead, what I can do is first align all to the left to align all with respect to this text, and then realign now to the right. Now let's look at the problem with this update. When it comes to tags, this doesn't work perfectly. In this case, it worked because the text in this family is also aligned to the right. But if for some reason we have a tag aligned to the center, for example, I'm going to change alignment here in the family, show it. Really, even if we align all the texts to the right, there will always be this space between the texts and the tag. Improvement has to do with reinforcing bars for concrete. Revit has been taking the construction process into account more and more, and in this case, it allows us to create splices easier than before. For example, I have a slab here to which I am going to add a group of rebars every 200 millimeters. If we see it in 3D, we can see the bars. And let's say I want to add and splice. I just select the rebar group, and in the Modify tab, we can see that this rebar splice button has been added. I'm just going to click on it, and it splits the bars, giving us a splice that we can easily see here. If we are okay with the location, we can hit OK. Otherwise, we can edit the type of splice we want. I'm just going to click on the splice icon again, and we see that we have several options right here. In this case, the option to split by length is activated. Here, for example, I am going to change it to a maximum of 3 meters and cut it like this. Or we can simply ask it to generate a single splice at any spot. But actually, we are going to choose the length option, assuming, for example, that each rebar element comes from the factory in a stock length of 6 meters. Then we are going to define that length as the maximum that we want to allow. Once those splices are generated, we are going to check that they actually have that specific length. This first rebar group actually measures 6 meters, and the next one 2, and the last one should be a little less. On the other hand, if we switch to choosing a point, we can place the splice anywhere, and then we can easily move that position to where we want it. This upgrade also has a notable limitation, as it cannot be used in area reinforcement. Let me show you. I'm just going to create this area reinforcement for this same slab, and I'll show only one direction. As you can see, if I select the reinforcing bars, we no longer have the splices option as we had in the previous example. So this option is only for normal reinforcing bars. The last improvement in this video comes for a tool that is rarely used in Revit Structures, but that I use a lot for facade elements in steel structures. And that tool is curtain walls. For example, this building that I used for the basic steel structures course, I have some girts modeled as a curtain wall, because this tool gives me the freedom to add windows and doors as secondary elements. In Revit 2023, I'm going to select the curtain wall, and as you can see, I've got these element types for the horizontal elements, which are cold formed C profiles. I'm just going to edit the profile and create a second girt, placing 2 girts next to each other and welding them together to create this stronger element. If I try to load this profile into my project, it will pop up this error saying that I can't have a profile with more than one closed loop. In Revit 2025, however, we can now add 2 or more closed loops to the same profile. I'm going to do the same exercise now in Revit 2025. I'm just going to edit the profile, add the second element very close, upload it back to the project, and now it does allow me to create this double girt elements. Another way we can take advantage of this improvement is when we need to add reinforcement to the first girt from the top. Adding another profile like this and creating a T-type beam to prevent it from sagging, and then adding a rod here to pick up the other girts below it. I'm just going to go back to the profile I had created and modify it to place the second girt perpendicular. However, in this case, I am going to save the profile with the same name, but anti-sag at the end of the name to differentiate it. I'm going to load it to the project, and now we can see it here. But loading the profile is not enough this time. We have to create a curtain wall mullion element type. So I'm going to duplicate this one I already have here, give it the same name, but with anti-sag too. And in this option, I'm going to change the profile that we just loaded. Now, to include it, I am going to select the curtain wall, and I'm going to change the element option in border to type. I choose the anti-sag element, and the problem is solved. Of course, the profile will need to be modified well to be able to change the dimensions of this new element and its position so that it is centered and closer to the first element without intersecting. And that's all. I hope you found this video about the new features and limitations of Revit 2025 useful, particularly in structural projects. See you in the next one.